me because they said he had a right to privacy.
Yeah, we had a case too. As a matter of fact, it was in Florida. Before I lived in Florida, we had a case down here. The woman was being stalked online, and this character down here was sending her pictures and describing what her kids were wearing to school as they walked to school in the morning. And,
oh, my gosh.
Yep, I located him. We identified him. I had his social security number. I knew where he worked. I had all his information. We gave that to the sheriff's department down here. And he said, well, that's not illegal. You can do that. You can follow someone's kids to school every day and report back to their parents what they're wearing. There's no crime there.
Oh, my gosh.
Another guy I keep my eye on, though, okay? You keep your eye on these kind of people. And there's a lot of PIs out there and people, ex-police officers, people in the justice system, or just advocates who do this kind of thing, too. And there's certain people out there, you know they're up to no good, and you keep your eye on them.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure you know the recidivism rate for these offenders.
It's hopeless.
You can't just assume because they've had their hands slapped in jail one time and the judge says, you can go now. Don't think for a minute that is the end of the story. That is just a little blip on the radar. So they have to be watched. And I tell people, don't become part of the problem. Don't stalk these people. Don't threaten them. Don't catch their yard on fire or do anything. Don't make yourself part of the problem. But know who they are and where they are. And since on the sex offender registry, that is public information, you can then share that with people without breaking any laws, because it's already out there anyway. Make sure the people closest to him geographically know what he's been convicted of. It's extremely important. With this guy at Halloween, I decided to just make copies from the offender registry and put it on the side of the mailboxes for the whole neighborhood. Because I figured I could either do that or I could sit out in front of his house on Halloween night. And it would be cold. So I decided to do that instead. And I'm sure virtually 100% of the people in the neighborhood would have had no idea about this person at all.
And another thing, too, when this topic, it always bothers me. You'll see these memes on Facebook saying, hey, do you believe that pedophiles should get the death penalty? Right? And everyone says, oh, 100%, 100%. But people don't realize that the average conviction for a pedophile that's not molesting their own family member, if they're molesting a stranger, is 8 years. And they only serve 3.5 years of those 8 years. So before we go, demanding death penalty, we should be having serious prison sentences and follow-up, long probation, long parole sentences for these people, and not letting people out in 3.5 years. Or like you said, in those cases, suspended sentences, which goes on a lot more than people realize. People think these people are getting 40 years, and that's just not happening in my experience.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for this particular crime, I have been a strong advocate for mandatory minimums. Maybe not for other crimes, but for this particular crime, for sex offenders, mandatory minimums, because they can either die or they can be locked up. That's the only way that you can protect them from the public. And so, and unfortunately, like in our particular case, it took an awful lot of victims, a huge body count, before they ever decided to do anything serious about it. And what helped was that the media was climbing all over it too. So that was a big help. But not everybody gets that. Not everybody gets to have the advantage of that. And like I said, so many people, as adults who are my age and older, have told me, that I told my mom, I told my dad, whatever, and they refused to believe me because it was just going to open up a can of worms, and it's so much easier to assume the kid's a liar and look the other way.
Yeah, look at the case I was telling you about before, the Disneyland guy. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't hiding in the shadows, changing his name. He was writing books. He wrote like 10, 20 books. And then openly telling me, and the reason why he was so easily to find that he was on a sex offenders list is because he was in the papers for violating, for not registering at one point in his life. His name came up. It's a very common name, too. So it's not like these people are hiding, there's way more. And another thing, too, is, it's for the victims, for the survivors of these things, it's a lifelong trauma, okay? And even when I find these young women and I say to them, okay, I can get you an attorney. We can, because it happened at a school or a jail or a church. I said, I got an attorney for you. We can go there. We can sue him. It happened at Disney. We just had a suit against Disney. And these women, they're all for it in the beginning, but they can't go through with it. They can't follow up because it's just too traumatic in their life, and it's just heartbreaking because some of them, they need the money too. It's just heartbreaking.
Oh, absolutely. This is what the criminal's counting on too.
Yeah.
The trauma of the victim and the fact that in many cases victims just don't look back at all. It's so frustrating that it's so not reported. If we learned anything from the pedophile priest scandal, and believe me, I'm not picking just on priests, but that made national news. If we learned anything from that, sending them to a different place isn't going to make it go away. And it is amazing how brazen they can be on social media and such. Again, because there's so many more of them than there is of law enforcement. And so you really do have to learn to be your own detective and learn who's in your neighborhood. It's so much easier this way than going through the court system, I can tell you.
I think you're talking about the Pennsylvania grand jury report that came out a couple of years ago, and it's about 400 pages long. And I read the whole 400 pages. I was brought around as a guest to talk about that report many times on many shows. But there's a preface to that 400-page report where the grand jurors felt so emotional and felt this was so serious that they wrote in plain English a 20-page preface where they laid out a summary. And I would encourage everybody to Google that, the Pennsylvania grand jury report on the pedophile priests. And it'll come up, and you can read the whole thing. In fact, I always said I was going to put it on my website. I'm going to put it on Patreon tonight for free. And the first 20 pages, these grand jurors were affected personally just investigating these crimes. And it was horrific. And if you look into it, too, I don't know what these priests had time to do for the rest of their day, because they seemed focused on these activities. It just seemed to be the focus of their life was going after little kids.
Absolutely. It's an addiction. I mean, it is an addiction. And I'm not saying that to feel sorry for them, but I was told it was just as strong of an addiction as, say, crack.
Yeah. There's definitely something there more than just the average person's sexual proclivities. Now, Polly Franks, I've taken a lot of your time. We've only got about 2 minutes left, so I'd like to see what you want to leave us with. The book, Devil at My Door. I can't encourage people enough to go and purchase this book and read about Polly Franks' life and how to prevent these kind of things, but also, too, to support her work. Devil at My Door. You can find it at Amazon.com. So, Polly, what do you want to leave us with?
Well, there's a couple of books on Amazon by that same name I found out later, but just look at my name with it, by Polly Franks. But again, be vigilant. Don't be afraid to be seen, being paranoid. For years, my kids were, it wasn't easy to have a PI for a mother, but now it's become a joke. And now that I have a granddaughter, my daughter is just as protective as I was of her. It's so much better to just, extend yourself and find out what's there than have it brought to you in a terrible, terrible way.
Now, Polly Franks, people can find your book on Amazon, and like you said, include a Devil at My Door and include the name Polly Franks, or even if you include the name of the offender here, Joseph Frank Smith, it comes right up right away, too. But how can people find you if they want to interview you, they want your help, they want to hire you as a PI? How can they find you?
Well, I'm on Facebook as Polly Franks.
There you go. And
so, that way. But, one quick thing I did want to tell you is that, Smith left San Diego in 1983, okay? To this day, I am getting contacted by women who were little girls who were assaulted by him back then, and they're still living with this. And they're contacting me because of my involvement in the case. But to this day, 40 years down the road, they're still dealing with it. They're adult women now, and they're telling me how it changed their childhood irreparably.
Yeah, and I'm sure just from doing this show, I'll get a couple of emails. I know the name. I know the guy. I've seen him around. He did the same thing to me. Did the same thing to my little sister. Polly Franks, thank you so much. Once again, the book is called Devil at My Door. You can find it at Amazon. It's co-authored by Ted Schwartz. And if you Google that with the name, too, Joseph Frank Smith, it comes right up. Polly Franks, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night.